Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Code Remix Weekly. I am your usual host, Sam Snyder, VP of Engineering at Moderne. With me today is not our friend Tim. He is out enjoying a wonderful vacation, but regularly scheduled Tim related programming will resume next week. So let's start things off with some announcements, and then we'll get into the main subject of today, which is an interview and discussion with Moderne technical writer Mike Solomon. All right, so let's check out some announcements. So first off, the Moderne Monthly newsletter for October 2024 is out. If you're not already subscribed to this on LinkedIn, I recommend you do so. There's some fun stuff there. My face will pop up occasionally. That's always good. Oh yeah, an article by me got published in the New Stack about keeping your supply chain of dependencies perpetually up to date with recipes and the like. If you are watching this program, you're probably kind of already hip to this a little bit, but I encourage you to go check it out. Beyond that, we will be hosting a Code Remix in person conference in Miami in 2025. Check out this QR code or go to bit.ly CRS updates to learn more and consider registering. It's going to be a good time. I'll definitely be there in person. A bunch of other Moderne and Open Rewrite contributors and staff will be there in person. Assuming Miami still exists after the hurricane today, but that's going to mess up Tampa more than Miami. And a year from now, I'm sure it'll be fine. Let's see. Next up, we've just released Open Rewrite 8.37, whole variety of fixes in there. This is kind of the first release in a couple weeks. I need to go back in here and add in a few commits that I made to these release notes because I have a bad habit of committing directly rather than going through pull requests. So the generate from release notes button does not automatically include my contributions. Beyond that, we have created a rewrite GitLab module. So if you are a user of that source control and CI system and would like to use or contribute recipes related to automating GitLab CI or anything else about interacting with its APIs or files, Rewrite GitLab is the place to contribute those recipes. Speaking of recipe contributions, Rewrite Migrate Java has seen some contributions recently on the subject of Joda time, specifically on the subject of moving away from Joda time to the built-in Java time libraries. So if that's of interest to you, pop in, check those out, make some contributions to them, and together we can get everyone on Java time and simplify things a little bit. In Tim news, Tim has no fewer than 3 upcoming events to announce as he continues his perpetual tour of all of the technical venues in Europe. He will be in the Belgian Java user group in Brussels, Belgium, on Thursday, October 24th. So just over 2 weeks from now. So any Belgians or Netherlanders or people in Western Europe who want to say hi to Tim, I was in Brussels recently, lovely city. So that could be a lot of fun to go and join Tim there. But if that doesn't work for you and you're maybe more Nordic, well, he's also going to be in Oslo, Norway, Thursday, October 17th, which I guess is actually a week sooner. So maybe I should have announced this one first. Oh well. So yeah, it'll be in Oslo, Norway on the 17th, talking about using Open Rewrite and Moderne to do major Java migrations and the like. And then for the third and final Tim-related announcement, he's also going to be at this Open Rewrite and Machine Learning meetup. And I should have checked the date in advance. October session. When is this event? This is in Thursday, October 15th. And this location, which looks nice. What country is this in? So this is in Tim's native Netherlands. So yeah, if you're in the Netherlands, Belgium, or anywhere in that region, go and say hi to Tim at one of these events. And then our final kind of new announcement for today is that the Open Rewrite documentation has moved its backend from the old one to Docusaurus. The content should all be the same, but the presentation is a little different, including having this night mode, day mode button that you can click, which helpfully defaults to your operating system's uh, currently set preferences. And here with us to talk about this documentation migration, amongst more general subjects of technical communication, is Moderne technical writer Mike Solomon. Welcome to the show, Mike. How are you doing today?
Thanks. I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. I got enough sleep last night. Been socializing with friends recently. Fixed a bug with Maven dependency resolution that had been bothering one of our customers and therefore bothering me quite a lot last night. So I feel a palpable sense of relief as bugs bugs that I know are bothering like friends or customers weigh on me psychologically until they're dealt with. And so I've unburdened myself of that particular problem, and I'm feeling a heady rush of relief that will last exactly until I start working on the next bug. So I'm doing good.
Yeah, I feel that. I feel that.
So Mike, you've been with Moderne for 2 years now, right? A little over
Yep.
2 years and change. And before that, you were and in the capacity you've been with us has been as a technical writer. Before that, you were a software engineer at Amazon, right?
Yep. That was one of the
So
places I worked. Yeah.
one of the places, yeah. We've all worked a whole variety of places. Um, the open rewrite and modern documentation gets a lot of praise from people. A lot of people comment that it is clear and effective, and broadly has the content they're working for. And I personally attribute some of that success in the kind of state of the documentation to you having that software engineering background, right? I we fortunately never had to try having a technical writer who had no software engineering background to communicate about these subjects because we found you. But I've always figured that it might be a struggle for someone who had not been a software engineer to write about these very like nitty gritty details of software engineering and automating aspects of that. So I guess that's always made me curious about the journey you took from software engineering to technical writing. Software engineering is so much fun. What made you want to leave after I described the palpable stress a bug causes me?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because like when I started doing software development, it was like in fifth grade on my like graphing calculator, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, like, and everything was so cool at that time. It's like even making
Yeah.
like Hello World appear was like, wow, look at me go or
Magic. Yeah.
whatnot. And yeah, like I mean, I basically had done like software development from that point on. Like through high school, I did like robotics, and college
Yeah.
CS degree, blah blah blah. But like when I got in the industry, I found that it was very different than just
Mm.
the same fun, like whimsical, like oh, I'm making things, it's cool, like. And
Not
I
as
like
whimsical. Yeah.
yeah, I know. There's a lot there, and like, I worked at a variety of different places, but ultimately, I feel like no matter where I worked, I always would feel like stressed and like things like on call, poor management, technical
Yeah.
debt, an
Yeah.
overemphasis on performance metrics. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like all of those things just kind of made it so I just wasn't that interested in coding. Like,
Kind of sucked the fun out of it a bit.
yeah, exactly. And so it's like when there's all this like external pressure and you can't really do what you think is good, and like there's all these other things to worry about, like I don't
Hmm.
know, I just kind of like lost the appeal to that. And then it was like I basically was doing software development, and then like COVID hit, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to take a break and reevaluate life. Like I'd been doing, software development for 10 plus years, and then I was like, this is just not fun. Like I just feel stressed and anxious and blah blah blah.
For
So I was like,
sure.
okay, what do I actually like doing? Is there anything in the world that like I actually think is fun or interesting
Yeah.
or worth
Yeah.
pursuing or whatever? And like reflecting, I was like, I always really liked teaching people. Like as a
No, for
software
sure.
dev, like mentoring like people that were trying to get into software development was really
A
cool.
lot of fun.
I would always document things like whatever I was working on things. That's kind of like how I would solve problems, is by like writing stuff down. And
Yeah.
that ended up helping a lot of people, of like, as I was like learning, like, oh, here's how I'm going to write tests in JavaScript. And then people would be like, oh, this is so helpful. I can write tests in JavaScript now. And I was like,
Yeah.
that's something like, and
Yeah.
so I started like looking into technical writing. I took like a random class on it, just to like see kind of like what it's all about. And then I was like, all right, I'm going to start looking for jobs. And then Jonathan just pings me out of nowhere on LinkedIn. It was like, hey, I saw you're looking at technical writing stuff. You wanna talk? And I was like, this is the easiest job search ever. Like,
Yeah, yeah. I know what you mean. I wanted to. That was a little bit like my job search for Open Rewrite, where Jonathan and I were both working at Gradle, and when COVID happened and Gradle got nervous about their finances, they laid us both off. And it was kind of like, he was kind of like, well, not as paraphrasing, but like, I like the cut of your jib. You wanna join? And also paraphrasing my response, it was like, yeah, okay. It's a little bit more involved with that, but it fits within those broad outlines. You said something earlier in your response about your journey from coding to technical writing, about how you would write comments and how you would solve problems, or when you would be solving problems. An integral part of that process for you was writing comments describing. And this may be my interpretation of what you said, so correct me if I'm wrong, but describing your intent, describing the meaning of the code or the rationale for the change you were making. And I find myself doing that exact same thing a lot, where my kind of philosophy of what makes for a useful comment in code is that it should be about the intent of the code. Like, I've heard people argue in the past for like self-documenting code, of like documentation could be out of date, like comments can lie and mislead you, but the code always does what it says it does. So if you write your code well enough, then it's self-documenting. And that has never sat right with me, without like outright calling, saying like bullshit. That's not been my idea of what a comment is for. That what comments are for, they're about the why the code is the way it is. Like, what were the considerations that were going into it? It's like, often when I'm editing a piece of code and I've got some problem, and I'm like, I think I could like remove or change this thing in some way that would alter the semantics, but like, is there a reason it is that way? Like, what is the reason the code is the way it is really what I look for there to be comments describing. Because like, I can read the code, I can run the test, I can figure out what it does, but why it does is often the more salient question, I find. So I don't know if I had a question for you anywhere in there, or if I'm just really commenting that what you said resonated with me. And I often find that if I'm working on an issue and like I can't like write that comment at the beginning that like describes the why of the code and the change, then I'm not actually prepared to make the change itself. I know a lot of people, engineers, like speaking of Jonathan, who are very conversant with math and mathematics, and I imagine, I can't see inside their brains, have a kind of math oriented way, like they use mathematical thinking when they code. And for me, code has always been more like language. I don't, when I do mathy things or calculus or whatever, the tools I bring out there cognitively are not the ones I use while coding. So I'm curious if that was also your experience. Like, when you do program, are you doing language or math? Like, what does it feel like
language.
in your brain? Language, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, like I like thinking of it as talking to someone and trying to express things or whatnot. I
Yeah.
feel like I remember I was doing, I started Java, I think it was like Java 4 or something, but I remember
Hmm.
when Java 8 came out and there was all this Lambda stuff, and I was
Yeah.
just so displeased with this because I feel like Lambdas, it's very hard to express it in words. Like,
Hmm.
someone will like, you'll have this code of like these like things, and then you're trying to read it, but it's like
Hmm.
assuming stuff, and you have to like, especially the way that people defaulted to like describing or naming things. It's just like these one character things, and it's like this one character
Yeah.
dot, and like they all nest together. And I found it just like really difficult to talk about. And that I was like
Yeah.
kind of bummed, because before it was like, I know people like, like them, and lambdas are great in a lot of ways. But when they first came out, like it was very difficult to read or like
Hmm.
vocalize in a language.
Yeah, I hear you there. There's something to be said for the way that very traditional, very imperatively written code is like it is both. It has sometimes been critiqued, sometimes by advocates of functional programming or other like programming paradigms, as as because it is this like a list of instructions that you follow, 1, 2, 3, 4, just kind of in order like that, that there's various drawbacks around like parallelism. There's various drawbacks around expressivity of code. But I think for like reading comprehension, for the challenge of you've got some code in front of you and you need to make sense of it, like that, the rigidity of that structure can help like make it clear and comprehensible to a reader. So did your feelings about lambdas change over time? Like, was it like a comfort thing, or do you still find code that is heavily lambdaed more frustrating to talk about or to read than code that is maybe more traditionally imperative?
I feel like over the years I've come to realize that there is a point to them sometimes, and that they can
Hmm.
make code better. But I think that
Hmm.
a lot of people don't know how to write code in a way that is clear.
Yeah.
And I mean, even I run into this a lot whenever I'm just like looking at code in general, and people are so focused on getting something that works that they don't
Yeah.
think about anyone that has to come in after them. And I'm like, why are all our variables single letters? Like why do these method names have no context? Like
Hmm.
I feel like those are the things that like really stand out to me in code that like other people
Right.
probably just don't care about at all.
Yeah, yeah. There's some of that. There was a quote that always stuck with me. Uh, that I forget who said this. I should probably know, but it was along the lines of that code is written primarily for people to read and only incidentally for computers to execute. And it initially stuck with me, as a student in like high school, college. As I'm like, as you know, like that can't possibly be true, right? Of like what, like there's like, if we're writing for other humans, the code isn't what we write, right? Like we write books and articles and other things. So like, what are you talking about? But the truth or wisdom of that statement definitely became more apparent to me as I moved from school into industry and worked on a lot of larger scale projects, where it's like, oh, this project is too big to fit in any one person's head, right? It is like my first job out of school was working at Microsoft on Windows, which is just like clearly like just a friggin' mountain of code. It's like, oh, this will never fit into my brain. The only way that someone can work on this is for it, like the code to be written for maintainers, written for the people who will come after you, who will often be, you yourself a few months down the line, just having, undergone 50 context switches since you wrote it, being like, okay, wait, reorient myself. What is this all about? So yeah, I hear you there. I see a lot more kind of wisdom in that statement when originally it just kind of puzzled me. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I feel that.
yeah. So I wonder. I've sometimes observed that some people get into coding or computer science because they don't like working with people, they don't like communication or socialization or having to sell their ideas to people. And I have always observed throughout my career that people who get into software development with that mindset have a low ceiling set on their careers, because this is fundamentally a team activity, right? This is a team sport we're playing, and just talking about like clear communication and code, so much of it is about being able to collaborate and work effectively with others. So I guess I'm trying to find a way to turn this observation into some kind of question or prompt for you. Uh, you are an effective technical communicator, and it sounds like you always had I believe you always had kind of like a literary or wordy sort of interest. You've always been engaged with the written word and verbal communication. Um, what what drew you to that? I mean, I guess some just some aspect of your personality. I guess when you looked inside yourself to be like, what do I actually like? When you were going on that journey, what led you to select technical writing as the direction you would go?
Yeah. I feel like I really like building people up. I like
Yeah.
improving the world. I like making people feel better about themselves.
Hmm.
When someone like first learns something, or like there's like that
It's this
moment where it
magical moment.
clicks, it's great. You just feel like, oh man, like
Yeah.
this is so exciting. Like,
Yeah,
you know,
man.
I remember that, like, even when I wasn't working, I was still like, I would dedicate time to like mentor people that were trying to get into like engineering. And like
Right.
whenever they like solve some like problem and they were just like, oh my gosh, like it's
Right. Got
working.
this
It's
eureka
just,
moment.
yeah, it's like, oh, it's a great feeling. And I feel like that in general is kind of like what really drives me a lot, is like I like
Yeah.
trying to make everyone happy. And I know that sounds like, really bad, like, because you can't, like, in life you can't make everyone happy. But
People pleasing can become pathological, but it isn't an
right.
inherently bad idea for us as creatures in a social species to take interest in the well-being of the people around us.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I feel like with technical writing and with writing in general, it's you're so much closer to people. Like I remember
Hmm.
as a dev, it would be like, gosh, like I remember we were trying to ramp up for, the holidays at Amazon. And
Yeah.
like I had to scale like one of our services. We were trying to do something like 100,000 database transactions a second. And
Hmm.
the garbage collector would just like the space, like the heap space would just like go up, and then it would like crash at like the top and like do a full GC and like, so on and so forth. And I spent weeks looking into this, try to figure out how to like optimize this GC so that like it didn't have that, so that we could
Right.
support this. And
Right.
like no one noticed at all, right? Like it's like basically the only thing is that more people
Down
can
there in the code
order.
mines.
Like, yeah, it's like, maybe like my manager was like, good job, right? But not a
Right.
single other person like cared or like thought about what it was.
Yeah.
um
Yeah, when you work on infrastructure type stuff, it can be one of those situations of like no one notices except when it's broken. What you
yeah.
yeah, what you say about finding emotional sustenance and helping people and helping those around you definitely resonates with me, as I found my kind of personal journey to working here at Moderne on this was very much grounded in similar sorts of feelings. When I was working after Microsoft, I worked at Tableau Software, which makes data analysis and visualization tools. And I liked that mission. I liked the idea of making it easier for people to understand and make stories out of empirical data and evidence. Like the world could use more good decision making, right, based on reality. And if you make that accessible to people, then they don't have to fall back on biases and assumptions as much. So I really liked that mission, and that led contributed to me being excited to join that company. And then when I worked there, I ended up working on the server administration team. So our customers were not like the people making data now. Doing data analysis or making visualizations, or even the people using Tableau server to like keep them up to date or distribute them within their organization, but on the administrators of Tableau server, who I'm sure are all very lovely, nice people, but who are concerned with updates and reliability and logs and failure tolerance and all these kinds of subjects. And I'm sure they're great, but they were abstract. I didn't know any Tableau server administrators personally. So when I'd work on a feature or fix a bug for them, it who I was helping was just like this kind of vague outline, this concept of a person in my head. Uh, but when I would fix something with our developer tooling internally, it'd be like Matt or Jill, like right next to me, would be like, "Oh, thank you." That was a thorn in my side for weeks, months, years. And I was like, "Oh, that felt good." I liked doing things for my fellow software developers who I know personally, and that recognition of that feeling really kind of started leading me down this path to that ended up with me working here, trying to as I see it, automate the tedium out of software development. Get rid of all the obnoxious stuff that gets in the way of doing some of the fun things that you talked about earlier. Because no one gets into this industry to update dependencies and manage their software supply chain and do oh boy, the freshmen at schools, like, I can't wait to get out there and help them upgrade, help a big company upgrade from Java 8 to Java 17. Like, that really gets me out of bed in the morning. So I'm like, well, if we can automate this stuff, if we can make it easy, then there's more left over for the fun things, or at least the challenging things, the interesting things.
Yeah.
So kind of on the subject of like clear communication and technical writing, we've been talking around some of the themes and maybe some of our motivations for partaking in these efforts to communicate clearly and effectively. I wonder if you have maybe any concrete advice for programmers writing comments, for people writing documentation. Like, what are some of your learnings and advice that you share with people around that?
Yeah. So for documentation, I'd say like one thing that I find very helpful is like I'll write something, and I'll step back for a second, and then I'll just try and read it out loud.
Oh yeah.
And like going through and just like talking about it, like just being like, okay, like as you read it and you're trying to like focus on reading it, you notice a lot of things.
Oh yeah.
And that can really, really help you like pare stuff down. But also, you do need to take some time between writing and editing. Like, I know a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people want to just like get
Do it in
something
one
out there,
shot, be done
ship
with it.
it. Yeah. But I find that whenever I come back to something after some period of time, there's all these things that I didn't think about, or that I was like, well, that actually sounds kind of weird now. But having that is helpful. Also, if you don't really know, like, how to phrase it, like, if possible, getting feedback from people on the things you're writing is always very helpful. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it as I'm writing something, like if there's something I'm a little confused about or whatnot, like one of the nice things at our company is I could like reach out to the engineers and be like, does this sound right? Like, does this make sense to you? And
Yeah.
have people review it and be like, oh no, like you missed this key point, or like this other thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and taking feedback from a bunch of different people, if possible, is really helpful. Whether that's engineering or like I look in like our open rewrite Slack channel a lot and see like, okay, what are people asking about? What are people confused about? And then it's like,
Yeah.
like I guess this didn't quite work for them. What can I
Right.
do differently to make it so that these questions don't keep being asked?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, 2 years in to your transition from software engineer to technical writer, how are you feeling about it? Are you enjoying it? Do you like it more than software engineering? Do you pine for the days of writing code more? I mean, I suppose with like the Docusaurus migration, like we had chatted about a little bit, you went and rewrote the rewrite markdown generator to help with that, which of course offends me terribly because I had written that originally, and it was perfect. So I don't know why you would have the arrogance and temerity to alter my perfect untouchable code.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was very great. I had a great starting point. It was just,
Uh
some quirks with Docusaurus. Um,
huh.
but yeah, like, job is good. I feel like it's very weird working at a company of this size because,
Yeah.
like my title is technical writer, but I do a
Yeah.
lot of different things here.
For
Like,
sure.
I do like QA, like whenever we do anything like with the CLI, the UI,
Yeah.
like any product, I'm always like in the product testing it, right? Because I
Yeah.
need to understand it to
Hmm.
like be able to write about it. And so then I'm writing bug reports, I'm fixing bugs, like so on and so forth. But then like, aside from like the QA and the bug work, I also, as like write code to generate docs. So like I
Yeah.
have like some software development there, and then
Hmm.
there's blog posts, there's YouTube video editing, there's all
Yeah.
sorts of different things. And in a way, I think it's nice that I get to do all these different pieces because like,
Yeah.
for instance, QA, I've always found to be a lot of fun, like trying things out and being able to try
For
and think
sure.
like, how are people going to use this? Like, it's very satisfying. But
Hmm.
also, I don't have the negatives that come with like QA, where it's like, midnight and people are trying to get something out, and they're like, QA, get your crap together, we need to get this out here, like, you know and like same with like the software development stuff. Like when I'm doing the like when I was working on the markdown generator to rewrite the docs, I didn't have someone like breathing down my shoulder, like judging me or being like, why are you doing it like this? Why are you doing it like that? Like I just got to work on it, and like I did it, and like everyone's like, good job, like I feel like it's a lot more freeing environment, and I think that's
Yeah.
that's nice.
Yeah, I definitely feel that too. Having worked at like Microsoft, mega large company, tens of thousands of people there who I would never meet, to like Tableau, thousands of people, to Gradle, at that time less than 100, and now Moderne like less than 50. It definitely affects things, and um, if you like the chaos, perhaps, if you like having the variety in tasks, and then a smaller company can be really good for that, as there isn't the proliferation of structure, people, and resources that allow someone to hyper specialize on something and be just like the master of one particular little widget. So you do definitely get to wear a variety of hats, as it's sometimes put, at the smaller company. I guess do you miss anything about working for the much larger companies? I suppose no.
No.
Some no, yeah, fair enough, man. Sometimes I do, like in my own role. It's I don't really get to say like not my problem, or like that's someone else's job, a lot of the time. If there's a problem, like and I'm not going to solve it. Like sometimes there's no one else who will. So it either, the pressure can be on to be the one who fixes it, or it just doesn't get fixed, which maybe contributes to that feeling of psychological pressure around bugs that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a technical writer, there's a lot less of that, because it's
Yeah,
like, if a sentence is like slightly like misworded or unclear, it's not like the whole system's gonna like go down or something, and it's not like
right.
customers are like gonna be raging. They'll just be like, oh, they just typoed, or like, whatever.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, it's confusing, but it's not the end of the world.
right.
People's Since you're talking to people more than computers, they can be more adaptable, more fault tolerant, and can tell you more specifically when they are confused or frustrated by something. So that's nice.
Yeah, yeah. Unlike that, the Markdown generator with Docusource, where it did not like a lot of the pieces.
Yeah, so if you have looked through the new documentation and you do find something that isn't rendering right, or a broken link or something, do let us know in the Open Rewrite community Slack, or in you could always open an issue directly on like the rewrite docs repository under the Open Rewrite GitHub organization. But I mean, I'll probably notice the Slack message more, before the other stuff. So that would be my recommendation. So yeah, do check out the new Open Rewrite docs. Let us know how you like them, and be sure to. And I think we're going to be moving the Moderne docs for the CLI and everything over to that as well, right?
I don't know.
You
Maybe.
know, maybe.
I was thinking that, but then some people on the team were also like, "Oh, we should just leave it," and I was like, "I don't know. We'll see." I think there's some benefits to having one system where everything is, and like
Yeah.
Docusaurus does allow us to do certain things like that would be kind of cool, like actually plopping in React components to the docs,
Hmm.
so we could like take parts of like
So it's a bit
the
more
modern.
flexible.
Yeah, like, if we wanted to like plop in the recipe builder or parts of it to the docs,
Now
that
that
way,
would be a cool
people don't
idea.
have to do like, login or something like that. We could do something like that. So,
Yeah, or maybe embed embed visualizations. Yeah, there's some interesting
yeah,
ideas there.
exactly.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, yeah. I definitely think there's a benefit to having only one system. My inclination would be move everything to Docusaurus, so there is just the one. Because one
Hmm.
of the things software engineers complain about, and technical writing and technical communication in general seeks to combat, is cognitive overhead, right? Of like just having to consider so many systems, so many technologies, so many dependencies, so many whatevers, that it just becomes a lot for one mushy, meaty human brain to handle. And every time there's two of a thing when there could be just one, it's a little more cognitive overhead, if nothing else. Like, so yeah, the
Yeah.
the, the argument of, well, we don't need it right now, so is it just fine to leave it, is like it's one of those, like, well, yes, but it's going to
Hmm.
be one, like, there's always going to be one more thing, right? It'll just be on a long tail of just one more things, where there's something's heterogeneous that could be homogeneous. So
Yeah.
I guess, insofar as my vote is relevant, I think we should move them to be on the same platform, whatever that platform is.
Makes sense.
Cool, cool. Well, I think we've had a pretty good conversation. Is there, I don't know, anything else you want to say about any of these subjects of technical communication, technical writing? Any, I don't know, guidance to software engineers on how to maybe talk to each other, or their adoring public or their customers more effectively? Yeah, just curious to hear your thoughts.
It's a fair question. Trying to think if there's anything that's like, like one good piece of advice. Um, I would say that trying to, keep in mind that we're all human and that like, everyone's generally trying to do right, and trying to do the right thing
Hmm.
is good, so don't, try and assume that, the best intentions and try and work with people on these things.
Hmm.
Trying to learn how you're expressing yourself is pretty useful. With all these like new AI things, Chat GPT can actually do stuff like, you could enter a message and be like, how does this sound? Like I saw internally in our Slack, someone did that where they were like, this doesn't sound quite right. If I copy this over to Chat GPT and it tells you like, hey, you're sounding kind of negative. You're sounding kind of like
Kind of hopeless or
aggressive.
defeated. Yeah, yeah. And I
Yeah,
know what you're talking about. Yeah, where there's a message being sent to a prospective customer about an issue, and Jonathan took the salesman's message and put it into Chat GPT. It was like, summarize the tone, and it was like, this is hopeless and defeated. And he's
yeah,
like, let's maybe choose a different form of messaging here. So yeah, I think that's a really good concrete tip, that you could get this quick feedback on tone, on, am I coming across the way I think I'm coming across, particularly if that's something you struggle with, or you find yourself getting misinterpreted or not getting your message across. I sometimes in communication go back to this analogy of an impedance mismatch, something I learned, but in college I studied electrical and computer engineering, because I thought I wanted to design like chips and circuitry, before I just veered more towards software because it was more fun than the electrical engineering stuff. But we did talk about transmission and power lines, and how to actually transmit power from one end of the line to the other, you have to match up the resistance of the line and the thing you're sending power to correctly, or effectively all the power just like bounces off and doesn't actually like go through with the efficiency that it could. And I observed that in human communication a lot, that one person saying something and the person they're talking to is not getting it, because they have different preconceived ideas about what they're talking about. They have just have not gotten on the same page. Yeah.
yeah. And with different cultures, especially how interconnected the world is, there's a lot of times where people don't realize that like other cultures have different ideas of how they communicate. And
Mm.
like they might, like I remember what you call it, there was like some example, there's like a book that was recommended to me by Lindsay inside of Moderne, about like I forget the name of it, but it was basically talking about different cultures and the way that people express themselves. And there was an example in the book where this like woman, had said that, oh, she was working with this Japanese man in this presentation, and like she was wanting him to like step in and like answer some questions or whatnot. And so she was, giving this presentation and just sort of like waiting and kind of being like, why is this guy not, not at like stepping in, like, what, and finally after like, a lot of like trying to like just go on, she was like, is there anything you want to say? And like, paused, and then he like began to like talk, and it was like, well, in their culture they don't want to talk over people, they don't want to interject, they
Right.
don't want to interrupt, like, so you know, it's like he was ready to do the things that they had asked about, but it was just like this misunderstanding of, oh, I'm expecting one thing, this person's expecting something else, like,
Hmm.
you know, trying to learn that and trying to understand that there's stuff like that, I think will
Hmm.
help make things a lot clearer and help improve like code documentation, blogs in general, of just like recognizing people come from different places, you know.
Can you give an example of how, when you're writing documentation or doing written communication for a broad audience, how that like how you apply that mindset?
So one thing I try and think about a lot with the documentation is that I don't want to use very fluffy words or words that or
That's good.
analogies that only apply in English, right?
Cultural idioms, yeah.
Yeah. And so I try and like, I remember like in my technical writing class, they mentioned that, you know, when people are reading documents, they're probably going to read like the first sentence of every like section maybe, or just the
Right.
section title. And that's about it. Like that's about as far as you get before people give up on you. And so trying to
Make
make
a good
like,
first impression, yeah.
yeah, trying to like clearly break up docs into like very specific things of like step 1 do this, you know, step 2 do this, like here's a question, like if your question is like this, then here's your answer, and making it so that as people go through the docs they can easily decide like this isn't for me, next thing, you know.
Hmm.
um, yeah.
Yeah, I hear that, and I relate to it. I come from a very wordy family who would do, everyone, parents and me and my siblings alike, would be like excited, like, "Ooh, I learned a cool new vocabulary word today. It's got like a Latin root. Let me tell you about it." And so, we would make a game of language in that respect. And as I got older, I realized that having an expansive vocabulary could, in many contexts, be an impediment to effective communication rather than an aid. As I enjoyed and still enjoy, kind of like trying to make just the perfect sentence that expresses exactly what I intend to say with all the right connotations lining up. I feel kind of the same way about that, about saying, like, expressing myself really well in that way as I do about having written a piece of code that just like really elegantly does exactly what it's supposed to. Going back to thinking of programming and language similarly in my mind. But I realized that it's actually, a barrier to use maybe more advanced or poetic or flowery vocabulary than is strictly necessary, and that erring on the side of simplicity and precision, particularly in technical contexts, is more effective. And some people will be because if you use a word that someone doesn't know or isn't like super familiar with, then they're like distracted by that and don't hear the stuff that comes after it, right? They're like, wait, what did he mean by that? Do I have the right connotation there? Get caught up on that and don't hear you after that point. So yeah, I think that dovetails a bit with what you were saying about keeping things concise and about realizing that like you can lose people very quickly into a line of text or a line of spoken conversation if there is any off ramp for them other than following your intended meaning. Yeah, fair
Yeah.
enough.
And to go along with that, one thing I've also been trying to do recently is do a lot more animations of like, you know, if it's
Mm,
like, oh, here's like, instead of being like, click on the settings menu and then click on help and then click on access token and then click on
yeah,
new, it's like, okay, let's just get some images. Let's get like actual, like showing the mouse and the
yeah,
screen, like, because people are a lot more willing to just like look at that. And like, you know, I still
mhm,
might describe things like to
yeah,
offer two options for people,
mhm,
but yeah, having images, having clear ideas of where people are going can help a lot.
yeah, yeah. Absolutely. I think that's very good advice. I wonder. Yeah, every now and then I've been tempted to, like, in code, include in comments diagrams and things, and it's usually not super conducive to that in these textual
Mhm.
formats we use. Although I have there was a website I've gone to before where you can draw like a chart, boxes with arrows connected to them, and have it rendered in text. And I thought that was a great idea, but for any not trivial diagram. Anything you would need a diagram for, they're just too big to like
Yeah.
properly fit in a comment over a piece of code. But I don't know, maybe one day we'll have better embeddings for comments and what have you. Easier to have I don't know, images or things linked inside them. Well, good stuff, Mike. Thanks for joining me this week. I've had a lot of fun, and hopefully you have as well. And I guess any final remarks, any message for the people who might be seeing you in the Open Rewrite community Slack or Discord from time to time, answering questions or summarizing these Code Remix Weekly episodes. Yeah, anything you want to say to everybody?
Sure. I'd say feel free to reach out if you have any questions, if you want to talk about docs, if you want general feedback on things. Like I'm always happy to talk about technical writing and like writing in general. So I'm available. But yeah, thanks for having me.
Excellent,
It's
excellent.
been fun.
Great. Well, thanks for coming on, Mike. Next week, I think I'm not sure what topic we'll have yet, but I believe Tim will be back. So we'll be back to our regularly scheduled programming. And thanks for joining us today, everyone. It's been a pleasure and an honor. Until next time.
Thanks. See you.